So at the same time, I don't want to say that Germany is a liberal democracy at this point. It's not. Why? Because as these industrial reforms are happening, there are more groups that are discontent, okay? And they pose a problem to German unity, okay? And these groups are obviously the Catholics. A third of Germany now is Catholic because Prussia has united all of Germany, right? For the longest time, the Holy Roman Empire was Catholic. So a third of all the people is Catholic. Bismarck, his biggest failure, his biggest mistake was his attempt to suppress the Catholics, okay? He basically said, listen, we're not going to fund you anymore, and if you insist on swearing loyalty to the Pope, then we'll put you in prison. You now have to swear loyalty to Germany. And so the priests all went to prison, okay? And this was a disaster for Bismarck, and ultimately he had to compromise and relent, okay? So the Catholics are a huge problem. Then you have the liberals, okay? So you may have heard the term liberalism, socialism, communism. There's a huge difference between these three terms, guys, okay? So let me explain what the differences are. Liberalism means more political rights for the middle class, right? Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, voting power. Why? Because the middle class have economic power and they want to transform that into political power, okay? The socialists want democracy for all. They understand that for democracy to really happen, you need to provide worker protection. You need to create class consciousness. You need to let workers have unions, okay? So that's socialism. Then you have communism, which is more radical. Basically, communists believe wealth should be redistributed, okay? We should get rid of private property and redistribute wealth for more equality in society. Also, communism is an international movement, okay? You also have Polish nationalists. A lot of people in Germany at this time are Poles. They're Slavic people who have their own language, have their own ethnic identity. And ultimately, they will form Poland, okay? And at this time, they're a huge problem for the German state, and they are suppressed as well. Then you have people called the anarchists. The anarchists are people who believe that we don't need government. We don't need authority. People should just be allowed to do whatever they want to do. People are self-organizing, and as a result, government is bad, okay? So you have all these different political groups, and they're all very powerful, and they all pose a problem to German unity, and as a result, they are persecuted one by one. This is important because at the end of World War I, when Germany has surrendered, they will reflect on why they lost. And one conclusion that they had was because of all these political divisions, okay? There are too many divisions within society. Therefore, we need to suppress this division and create one political entity. And this is what allows for the rise, of course, of Hitler and the Nazis, okay? So this is important to understand. All right, World War I. Again, if Germany is too powerful, Britain is forced into action. Britain cannot allow for a hegemon to be dominant in Europe. Britain went into action against Napoleon when Napoleon was a hegemon. Now they're going into action against Germany because Germany is too powerful, okay? And World War I, no one expected this, but World War I was a catastrophe, okay? Millions of people died. And it was an alliance of Britain, France, and Russia, basically against Germany. I mean, Germany did have the Ottoman Empire and the Austria-Hungary Empire as allies, but they were not effective. It was really Germany versus the world. And what's amazing is Germany was able to create a stalemate, or even and there was actually sometimes when Germany was about to win, okay? And of course, when that happens, if Germany is going to win this war, it forces the Americans into action. Okay, why? Well, first of all, the Americans think like the British. The Americans and British do not want a European power to emerge to unite the heartland, okay, to unite Asia and Europe, because then it negates naval trade, okay? Does that make sense? Second reason is the Americans actually lend a lot of money to the British, okay, something called the Lend-Lease policy. So if Britain lost the war, then all that money is gone, okay? So America comes in to save Britain, okay? But even at this point, this is really important, even at this point, Germany, it was not clear Germany was going to lose the war, okay? Russia was knocked out of the war, France was divided, Britain was not that effectual. So it's not clear at this point Germany was going to lose. okay, chances are Germany was going to lose, but Germany had not lost yet. And if Germany could mobilize all its resources, then Germany could withstand this onslaught. But then something happened that was very important. That changed the mind, the calculus of these German generals. The 1917 Russian Revolution. Why did the revolution happen? Because Tsar Nicholas was too focused on the war, and he neglected the political divisions at home. Okay, and this allowed for a revolution to happen. So the German generals who are in control of Germany at this point, they're scared to death of this happening in Germany. Because remember, at this point in history, the nation with the strongest working class, the proletariat, is actually Germany, not Russia, okay? So as a result, this man's name is Paul von Hindenburg. He's very important. He's now head of the German military as well as head of the German nation. And he forced the German government to surrender to the Allies. Okay? And this led to the 1919 Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles had many stipulations that were unfair to the Germans. Okay? So the Germans had to pay a lot of debt. They could no longer rearm. They had to reduce their military. They lost a lot of land to France. Okay? But the worst thing that the Allies did in this negotiation was it forced Germany to admit complete guilt for starting the war. That was completely unfair. Okay? This war happened for many reasons. Everyone was involved. Everyone had a certain blame. But Germany had to take all the blame. Okay? And as a result, the government did not want to sign this treaty because obviously this is going to piss off all your people. But the army forced the government to sign the treaty. Okay? And the thinking of the army at this point is, listen, we've been in this situation before. Okay? We lost Napoleon. Right? And so we just paid off a lot of debt to Napoleon and then rebuilt. Okay? And then when we rebuilt, we made the nation stronger. We're resilient. So we'll do the same thing here. Okay? We'll just surrender, accept all the terms, then we'll start to rebuild and unify the nation and take revenge against everyone, okay? And that was like the thinking of the military, okay? Very simple strategy, right? The Weimar Republic is what follows after the war. And the Weimar Republic is 10 years of hyperinflation, social discontent, complete chaos, okay? And when a nation suffers economically, politically, culturally, what it often does is it engages in a deep process of reflection. It goes back into the past and thinks about how to rebuild itself. Okay? So some philosophers that are very important for thinkers of how to unify Germany are like Arthur Schopenhauer. Okay? Arthur Schopenhauer is a very, very important philosopher. All right? His conception of the world is that the underlying force of the world is the will, okay, desire. And the will manifests itself physically in us, in bodies, okay? Do you understand the idea, okay? So the underlying force of the universe is the will, desire. And then the will physically manifest itself in our bodies. And then our bodies will seek to do what the will wants, which is to procreate, right? To have sex, to have children, to eat food. Okay? Now, the paradox of this situation is before the manifestation in our bodies, the will was just one, right? There was no differentiation. But once the will manifests itself in our bodies, there's now differentiation, okay? There's multiplicity, and as such, we see the world through our own perspective, through our own selfish perspective, which leads to conflict. You understand? It is because we've forgotten that we are just one that leads to conflict and suffering. Okay? So his great solution to this is compassion. As humans, we must first and foremost be compassionate towards each other and remind ourselves that we are just one people. Okay? And we can do that through the appreciation of art. Because art is a great unifier, right? Art is the thing that allows us to contemplate the wholeness and the harmony of the world. And then he says that there's some of us who should engage in self-denial, who should become like monks, who should deny the world, because the world is inherently evil, right? So when you refuse to have children, when you refuse to struggle, to suffer, then you achieve enlightenment, okay? And this is easy for us to understand because this is a very Buddhist ideology, okay? So he's basically taking Buddhism and Hinduism from India, and he's making it more secular. He's trying to remove the religious aspects of it and make it into a logical system, okay? Does that make sense? All right, so he says, life has no intrinsic worth, but is kept in motion merely by desire and illusion. And as such, if you can remove the desire from your life, you achieve nirvana, you achieve enlightenment, okay? This is a really important passage, okay? Music is thus by no means like the other arts, the copy of the ideas, but the copy of the will itself, whose objectivity the ideas are. This is why the effect of music is so much more powerful and penetrating than that of the other arts. For they speak only of shadows, but it speaks of the thing itself. Okay, this is really important. So how do we know the will? How can we access the will? It's through music, okay? Because the music is a perfect encapsulation of desire, right? It is the perfect expression of emotions. And so through music, we can rediscover the unity of the world, the unity of the will.